here in Washington, D.C. at the Tidal Basin. Up to my left, right across, you see the Jefferson Memorial. And back behind me, you see, Rachel pan around there, is the Washington Monument. And back to my right here, you'll see the Stone of Hope being built here as part of, and this memorial is part of a Martin Luther King memorial to be dedicated on August 28th, 2011. Some of you will see this after the dedication has been completed. I can understand why blacks would want to idolize Martin Luther King, and I have no problem with that. I can understand why liberals may want to do it, because liberals, as far as I'm concerned, are working against the national best interest anyway. But why conservatives like Glenn Becker or Bill O'Reilly or Sean Hannity and many, many others, and ministers and preachers throughout the country, would want to honor such a man that has such a dark, sinister, and shadowy past? Now, right before you, you'll see what are called the Stone of Hope. And this was designed and constructed by Li Zhang, who is from communist Red China. Now, that's, of course, quite fitting considering the history of Martin Luther King. But what we're going to do right now is we're going to return back to my office, and we're going to sit down quietly, and I'm going to give you some history and some information about the dark, shadowy, and sinister life of Martin Luther King and his socialist connections. We're back here in Arkansas at my office, and we just came from the Martin Luther King Memorial in Washington, D.C. This is a new monument that's being built in D.C., right along the Tidal Basin, right across from the Jefferson Memorial. It's not finished. The construction is not finished yet, but it will be soon. Going to have a dedication on August 28th of 2011. Some of you will be hearing this after the dedication. Some of you will be hearing it before the dedication. But conservatives always tell us that we have to be aware. We have to be aware of the socialist agenda of the progressives. But then they show little concern for the progressive agenda, the socialist agenda, if you will, of Martin Luther King Jr. The social agenda of King and the civil rights movement, or the movement of social justice of the progressive that brought about the 1964 civil rights law, is the greatest social change that has occurred in the past 50 years. Martin Luther King was a progressive. Now, I know Glenn Beck and Sean Hannity and Bill O'Reilly, and this video is being addressed to them in many aspects. They want to emulate what they consider the ideals of Martin Luther King. But King was a progressive who worked to destroy the traditional values, the dream of America, with his own dream. And today we see the fulfillment of that dream, of Martin Luther King's dream, in the policies of hope and change of Barack Obama. King and his associates were progressives. They were socialists. They were, many of them admitted, communists. And his vision of civil rights or social justice was the destruction of property rights. The whole civil rights movement went on the theme that property rights are of no value, that property rights are secondary to what they call human rights. But we are aware, and you are aware, and the traditional history of our nation is built upon the fact that property rights are the bedrock of individual rights. Without property rights, you don't have rights. You don't have individual rights. And the whole theme of the civil rights movement, or the movement of social justice, was the destruction of property rights in enhancement of what they called human rights. And some of you may want to check out, as an example, the speech Martin Luther King gave at the Riverside Church in New York City on April 4, 1967, which he attacked the whole concept of property rights. Now, excuse me, Beck and O'Reilly and Hannity and other conservatives, they fail to look at the associations of Martin Luther King. Or if they do, they keep it silent. They always want to tell us, they always want to say to us, you got to look at a person, you got to look who he associates with. And when they look at Obama, they look at his socialist agenda, they look at who he associates with, his
socialist and his progressive contacts that he has. But these same people fail to look at the socialist agenda, or excuse me, the socialist connections, the associates of Martin Luther King. We were told as a child growing up, and I'm sure you were told also, that you will become the kind of person you associate with. And the same is true with Martin Luther King. And I have to ask the question then, Mr. Beck, O'Reilly, Hannity, and other conservative leaders, why are you hiding this? Why are you hiding Martin Luther King's associates, his progressive, socialist, and communist associates? Certainly, King was aware of the people he was connected with, it because when you read his speeches, like the speech at Riverside Church, you see what his core values were. Now, I'm sure that your mama taught you, again, like I said, that you're going to become the kind of person you associate with. And Martin Luther King hung out with some bad people. These were the people he hung out with. Those people who were his mentors, you might say. And I wonder if you care. I wonder if the listeners care. People who may be listening to this who are associated with the Tea Party, or people Glenn Beck type, or Bill O'Reilly, or Hannah, the other three I pick out because they're very, very popular. And I like a lot of what they say, so don't get me wrong. I just wonder why they want to continually hide Martin Luther King's socialist agenda. Why do they want to use him as a mentor for our children? Let me give some examples here. In 1972, J. Michael R. Arisman, he wrote a book called The Alinsky for Teachers Organizers. Now, he was taking this man, Saul Alinsky, and he was saying how this man gave us the blueprint, gave us the program to help bring about social change. And I'm sure you know, but maybe you don't, that Alinsky was a mentor of Barack Obama. Alinsky was a socialist, a mentor of Obama, who used the peace-loving character of white people, used our character against us to destroy our Christian political institutions. He wrote a manual, Alinsky did, that is. He wrote a manual called Rules for Radicals. And it became a manual for groups like Acorn. It became a manual for individuals like Barack Obama. And it taught them and other community organizers, it teaches them how they can use our natural compassion, our natural Christian character, and use it against us. That's the whole idea behind Martin Luther King's nonviolent revolution. That was the whole idea behind Gandhi's nonviolent revolution. Their objective was the same. It's just their nonviolent approach, as they phrase they use, was a method to use our character, our peace-loving nature, and use it against us. Now, Saul Alinsky wrote his book, Rules for Radicals, and it may surprise you, but Saul Alinsky dedicates his book, Rule for Radicals, the mentor of Barack Obama. He dedicates it on his opening pages to Satan. You might find that shocking, but he does it right in the opening page. He said, I dedicate this book foremost to Satan. In order to show the power that Alinsky has in teachings and tactics and so on, Michael Arisman, who wrote this manual or this book, Alinsky for Teacher Organizers, here's what he said. He said, Martin Luther King, Ho Chi Minh, the communist dictator of North Vietnam, and Fidel Castro suggest the wisdom of this advice. In other words, he's just saying these guys recognize that Saul Alinsky methods, which were around for many years, really they were probably promoted mainly by Gandhi, But Saul Alinsky compiled into a manual, Rules for Radicals, and he says that this became a book that Martin Luther King used. His tactics, he used them, and Ho Chi Minh used them, and Fidel Castro used them. And so this is the man we're dealing with, Martin Luther King, and the tactics of King to destroy our white Christian heritage. It's interesting that he points out, that Michael Risman, it's interesting that he points out that Martin Luther King, North Vietnamese communist dictator Ho Chi Minh, and Cuban dictator Fidel Castro, he uses them as excellent examples of those who followed the radical, progressive, and socialist agenda of Saul Alinsky. And like I said, the book is dedicated to Satan, who Alinsky says and calls the first and greatest revolutionary. If a person wants to glorify King and nonviolent tactics to bring about social change, the tactics used by Gandhi and tactics used by others, progressives, if they want to say that those tactics were exceptional, I have no problem with that, because they were. Look at what they succeeded in doing. Was King a brilliant strategist? Yes, he was. Did he successfully manipulate the press and our compassion to support his objectives? Yes, he did. The answer to both of these, of course, is yes. He was brilliant in how he was able to use these tactics and twist like a person doing judo. Use our own compassion, our own nature, our own peace-loving nature against us. There's few that could disagree that he was a sagacious advocate for civil rights movement. He was supreme. No question about that. King used the tactics of Gandhi, as talked about by Saul Alinsky, so that he could successfully manipulate our compassion. It's working even today. It's working with people within the Tea Party movement, working with people who are good Christian conservatives, working with people like Sean Hannity or Glenn Beck, good people, and manipulate their compassion to bring about the destruction of this country we love so dearly. So I have no objection to those who want to admire the tactics of King. He used them very effectively. But Martin Luther King did not differ from Stokely Carmichael or H. Rap Brown or the Black Panther movement. It didn't differ in his objectives. He was seeking the same thing. He just used a different manner to bring it about. And